On a cool October morning in 2011, the world gathered around a small white building in Palo Alto, not knowing that inside, behind quiet walls and a closed bedroom door, the man who once bent the entire world toward his imagination was taking his final breaths. Nurses moved softly. Family whispered prayers. And outside, millions of strangers refreshed their screens, waiting for an update from a man who had spent his life teaching them to expect something new, something magical. With every touch of glass and metal. It was a strange kind of silence, the kind that didn't belong to a genius known for shaking the earth. Just days before, he had watched from a distance as Apple unveiled another device, sleek, simple, unmistakably his, yet he knew he would never step onto that stage again, never raise a product into the lights, never hear that roar of applause he quietly lived for. This was the end of a journey that began long before Apple, long before the Macintosh, long before the world argued about his flaws or admired his brilliance. It began with a boy who always felt out of place, always searching, always rebelling against anything that felt ordinary. And to understand that final moment, that quiet room, that world holding its breath, we must return to where the rebellion first began. Like, share, and subscribe. Tell us where you are watching from in the comments. He was born on February 24, 1955, in San Francisco, but Steve Jobs' story began with rejection. His biological parents, young and desperate, handed him over for adoption before he even opened his eyes to the world. It was a rough start, the kind that leaves invisible marks on a child's heart. But fate placed him in the hands of Paul and Clara Jobs, a warm, hard-working couple from Mountain View, California, who promised not just to raise him, but to believe in him. Steve grew up in a modest home with a father who spent long hours fixing engines in the garage. Paul had big calloused hands and the gentle patience of a craftsman, and he taught Steve one lesson he never forgot: every part matters. Paul showed him how to sand the inside of a wooden cabinet, a place no one would ever see, and he said something that would echo inside Steve for the rest of his life: a great craftsman always cares about the things people can't see. The neighborhood around him was simple, filled with kids on bicycles and mothers watching from porches. But steps away was a world humming with a different kind of energy. The engineers and dreamers of Silicon Valley were building something new, something the world had never seen. Giant ideas were growing in tiny garages. And in the middle of it all was a skinny boy with intense eyes and a mind that refused to sit still. He wasn't an easy child. Teachers called him difficult, stubborn, too curious for his own good. But one teacher, Imogene Teddy Hill, saw something others didn't. She pushed him, challenged him, and lit a fire inside him. Steve later said that without her, he might have ended up in jail instead of building Apple. He wasn't born brilliant. He was born restless, and that restlessness would shape everything that came next. The spark came quietly, almost accidentally, in that same small garage where Paul Jobs repaired engines. One afternoon, Paul placed a toolbox in front of Steve and handed him a simple radio to take apart. Metal clicked. Wires unraveled. And something in Steve awakened, not just curiosity, but a hunger to understand how things worked and why they worked that way. Later in high school, Steve met a boy who would change his life forever, a shy, brilliant engineer named Steve Wozniak. Woz, with his round glasses and gentle smile, loved circuits the way artists loved paint. He could make machines dance. Together, the two Steves became an unstoppable pair, the dreamer and the builder, the rebel and the genius. But before Apple, before fame, before the billions, came rebellion. Steve wasn't satisfied with college. He dropped out of Reed College after just one semester, but continued sleeping on floors, returning empty Coke bottles for change, and sneaking into classes that inspired him. He wasn't searching for comfort, he was searching for purpose. His spark came again during long walks across campus and through the spiritual journeys he took barefoot into strange temples and meditation classes. He explored Buddhism, fasting, and silence. He questioned everything: society, success, life itself. And somewhere in the middle of all that questioning, he realized what set him apart. He didn't just want to build things. He wanted to build meaningful things. Things that made people feel something. Things that changed lives. He didn't have a degree. He didn't have a plan. He had a spark, and that was enough. Every empire begins with chaos, and Apple was no exception. In 1976, Steve and Wozniak built their first computer in Paul Jobs' garage. The place smelled of sawdust, sweat, and solder. They sold their possessions to fund the project. Woz sold his beloved calculator, and Steve sold his Volkswagen van. They had nothing, yet believed they were building the future. But the world didn't see it. Investors didn't trust two kids with long hair and big dreams. Computer stores laughed at their design. Some even refused to speak to them. In those years, success felt like a mirage, close enough to imagine, too far to touch. Apple grew, but so did the tension. Steve was brilliant, yes, but also relentless. He demanded perfection. He pushed his team past exhaustion, convinced that nothing less than insanely great would change the world. Many admired him. Many feared him. Some hated him. But all of them felt the intensity of a man who believed he was racing against time. Then came the Macintosh, the project Steve poured his entire soul into. He handpicked the team, treated them like family, and told them they were building a dent in the universe. But behind the scenes, the board of directors whispered about his temper, his impatience, his recklessness. Slowly, the company he helped create began to turn against him. In 1985, the struggle reached its breaking point. In a closed-door meeting, Steve Jobs, the visionary who had built Apple from a garage, was voted out of the company. Fired. Exiled. Erased. He walked out of the building shattered, humiliated, and unsure of who he was without Apple. For the first time in his life, Steve Jobs felt powerless. But sometimes, losing everything becomes the beginning of everything. The world thought Steve Jobs was finished, but exile became his training ground. In his darkest moments, he built again, not from anger, but from clarity. He founded Next, a new computer company with a bold vision. The machines were elegant, advanced, and years ahead of their time. Though they didn't sell well, they quietly revolutionized the future of operating systems. At the same time, he purchased a small, struggling graphics studio, a place filled with artists and dreamers. He renamed it Pixar. And inside those quiet hallways, another revolution was brewing. He encouraged the team, nurtured their ideas, and pushed them to believe in the impossible. In 1995, Pixar released Toy Story, the world's first full-length computer-animated film. It became an instant global phenomenon. Steve Jobs was back. Not as a tech founder, but as a storyteller who changed cinema forever. But fate wasn't finished with him yet. In 1996, Apple, on the verge of bankruptcy, did something unthinkable. It begged Steve Jobs to return. The world watched as the rebel walked back into the company that had once cast him out. And this time, he wasn't just building computers. He was building history. The return of Steve Jobs marked the rebirth of Apple. The iMac, the iPod, the iPhone, the iPad. Every year brought something new, something disruptive, something undeniably his. He became the face of innovation. The world cheered. Crowds gathered at every keynote. His black turtleneck became a symbol of genius. But behind the stage lights, a darker story was unfolding. In 2003, Steve Jobs received a diagnosis that came like a thunderclap: pancreatic cancer. A rare form, slow-growing but deadly. At first, he refused surgery, hoping diet and alternative treatments would heal him. It was the one battle where intuition failed him. The world watched his body shrink, his steps slow, his voice grow softer. Yet he kept working, designing, planning, creating. He poured the last of his strength into every device, as if racing death itself. In 2011, the crisis reached its final chapter. He resigned as Apple's CEO, acknowledging what his body had been whispering for years. The rebel who had refused to follow rules now faced the one force no human could negotiate with. And the world held its breath. Steve Jobs passed away on October 5, 2011, surrounded by family, love, and the stillness of a life that had burned impossibly bright. But death didn't silence him. His legacy continued in the millions of pockets filled with iPhones, in the homes warmed by Pixar films, in the laptops and tablets that shaped a generation. He didn't just change technology. He changed how humans interact with the world. He fused art and engineering, intuition and logic, beauty and function. He taught us that creativity is not a gift, it is a discipline. That design is not decoration, it is storytelling. That simplicity is not minimalism, it is mastery. But perhaps his greatest legacy lies in a few simple words he once spoke. Stay hungry. Stay foolish. He lived those words. Fought for them. Built an empire on them. And today, every time a screen lights up with a single touch, every time a child dreams of inventing something new, every time someone refuses to quit, his story lives again. Like, share and subscribe. Tell us where you are watching from in the comments.